listening to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. In this Zoom age, okay, I'm looking at my guest, and my guest happens to be a very handsome man. I remember when he came in studio 6 years ago, I was like, damn, he's a handsome man. And he hasn't aged. Now me, I'm looking in Zoom. My eyes gotten lazier in 6 years. I've added a chin, and I'm sitting there, and you know, it irritates you. But what can I do? That's why he's a Hollywood leading man, and I'm just a guy doing a podcast. And my guest is a very talented Gregory Harrison. How you doing, Greg?
I'm good, Steve. Thank you for that. I'm 6 years older and I'm feeling it, but if you don't see it, then good, I'll take it.
Now, how are you dealing with the COVID? Are you, I mean, as an actor, because the industry, I think it's starting to pick up more now, but you've constantly worked for so many years. Does it tax on you where you're used to that grind, but now all of a sudden you're going, I don't have to worry about this?
It's not a matter of not worrying about it. It's you know, it's the longest layoff I've had in my, what is it now, 45 years I've been working, and it's frustrating. You know, I mean, I guess there are blessings in every curse. You know, I've spent time with the wife that I haven't spent nearly this much time with in the 38 years now that we've been married. Probably half of that I've been on location. But, you know, I haven't left the house other than, you know, to take a walk with her in 6 months, you know. It's just crazy. 5 months, 5.5 months. It's crazy. But I'm doing fine, you know.
It is weird. You know, you said you haven't left the house. You know, for us, I mean, I'll go, and like Joanne goes to the office, but it's just her boss, and like the whole office is empty except them and another, like them, someone on the first floor and them on the third floor. But for us, you know, besides me going to, you know, food shopping and stuff like that, I haven't been out. We've gone to a friend's house once or twice, which we socially distanced. But for, you know, anyone who has a background in entertainment, it's really weird because we're so used to socialize with people that it throws you off at first. I mean, how were you like waking up going, I got to be somewhere in the beginning, or how did you handle it?
It was really hard. It's getting harder actually, because other countries are starting to film. There's starting to be work going around, you know, and they're trying to do it here, sort of like they're opening schools here, you know, and then you're hearing about, you know, 500 people caught COVID last week in this college or that college. And so I'm hearing about Canada has lots of work starting to go, but if I'm going to go up there, and I have a couple of films that want to use me up there, but it's 14 days of sitting in a hotel room quarantining, you know, and it's like I feel like I've been quarantining, isolating, you know, for 5-6 months, and the idea of being stuck in a hotel room is very disturbing to me. You know, I'm dying to get out. I'm an outdoor nut. I always have been. You know, I grew up on an island, and I surf and I golf and hike and mountain bike, and I mean, I do a little of that. You know, I've been playing golf on Mondays with the same 4 guys. We never get closer than 20 feet to each other. Every Monday I'll play 1 round of golf, and that's a huge relief. But that's it. I haven't been inside a building. Other than a doctor's office, which are really, you know, strict and relatively safe, I haven't been inside a building in 5.5 months, other than my own house. It's just weird. It's just the weirdest year of my whole life. I don't remember anything ever resembling it in my 70 years. I just turned 70, and it's just befuddling, to say the least.
Now, I got to ask you, I saw you post on Facebook about your surfing trip got canceled. I want to hear about your surfing, because I know you grew up in Catalina, and if I recall, your father was a boat captain, I believe.
Exactly. Good memory.
Now, so
he was a captain of the glass bottom boat over in Catalina his whole life.
Now, tell people what that is, because people don't know.
Well, Catalina Island, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a little island off the coast of Los Angeles. About 20, there's a song from long ago, 26 miles across the sea, Santa Catalina is a-waiting for me. And that's the island I grew up on. My grandfather went there from Ireland in 1903, started the glass bottom boats, and ran them his whole life. My father took him over, ran him for 55 years, and I was supposed to take over the glass bottom boats after him. We'd be a third generation, islander and boat captain. They shot a movie, and when I was 15 in 1965, they shot a movie on my dad's boat called The Glass Bottom Boat with Doris Day and Rod Taylor, and I watched them film it. I mean, it was like the one time they shot a movie on Catalina, which is often used as a location, where they couldn't get rid of me. They couldn't get me off the set because my father owned the boat. My father was captaining the boat while they were shooting. So I got to stand next to the camera, and I watched them do it. I watched Doris Day and Rod Taylor doing lines, and they'd screw up, and Doris would go, bleep, bleep. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And it was an epiphany for me, because I went, oh, they're not magicians. I thought it was some kind of magic involved in being an actor. And I went, they can screw up. They just keep doing it till they get it right. It's like a complicated puzzle. You make all these little pieces, and then you fit them all together, and then you got your movie. And there's nothing in that I can't learn or do. And I literally decided on that day, that's going to be my future. And I was 15. I didn't start working till I was 25, but I had to go finish high school, go through the Army for 3 years, and be a helicopter medic. And then I went to Hollywood on the GI Bill and studied for 5 years, and then I got my first job. But literally 10 years before I started my career, I knew that was what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
But what's it like growing up on the island? Because it's not like Manhattan's an island. You take a tunnel. There's different things. Like Catalina, it's not like, hey, what is it like? Did you ever get off as a kid, or did you leave, or was it a pain in the ass just to sit there and go, it's going to take, I have to get on a boat, we have to go to the thing and this, and then you end up in Long Beach or wherever. Yeah.
San Pedro Bay, Long Beach, L.A. Harbor. It was really interesting because it's a psychological switch. It was so protective. The ocean around that island was a moat that protected me from the big, weird, strange world until I was about 15. And literally overnight, I remember thinking, this is like a prison wall keeping me from the world I'm ready to enter. And that was why the last 3 years of school, everybody wanted to be on the varsity, because we played baseball, basketball, track, and you'd literally get on a seaplane in Avalon Bay, take off in the bay with your team, and fly to the mainland on a Friday evening. Play your game that night, maybe the next day, stay in a hotel, an actual hotel, and then fly back on Sunday morning. And then in the intervening weekends, they would fly to the island to play us, which all the teams in California loved. So that was the only time I could get to the mainland. We called it the mainland. We called it Overtown. Overtown, 26 miles over there. Overtown. You could see it from there was a lookout point, Three Palms, where it was a makeout spot. But you could see the mainland. You could see the cars weaving around Palos Verdes Point, and dream about what the real world might be like. But it was wonderful. It was a wonderful, idyllic place to grow up.
Now, when you went to Hollywood, what made you decide to start studying? Because so many people just go to Hollywood and they think, oh, I can do this. What made you sit there and decide that you wanted to take classes and actually learn the craft?
Well, because I was always interested in performing, and I'd been performing in variety shows in elementary school in town, in my little town of 1,200 people. But I always was comfortable performing, and I was thrilled getting all the attention and all that. So I'd had some experience with it. I'd done the lead in the school plays, and Our Town. I'd done Our Town, and I kind of knew that if you wanted to be in this elite group of people who actually made a living doing this, whatever it was I chose to do. First, I wanted to be Mickey Mantle for the first 10 years of my life, and then whatever you chose to do, you had to work hard. I before Malcolm Gladwell, I knew that you had to put your 10,000 hours in to excel at something, and I loved those years in Hollywood, pounding the pavement, living on nothing, eating popcorn for breakfast, lunch, and dinner half the time just to fill my stomach, But it was so exciting every day to get up and go, today might be the day I learned something really valuable. I might find a gem today in my studies, And most days you didn't, but every now and then you'd leap to another plateau. And I knew eventually I was there for the long term. I knew I wasn't going anywhere. It was just a matter of time. And within 2 or 3 years of arriving in Hollywood and starting my studying, everybody else knew that in my workshops and stuff that, oh yeah, Harrison's he'll get a career, because I was so focused and determined, and I had some natural abilities, I think, but I also was just unstoppable. I just was determined.
How?
And I know it didn't scare me. It didn't scare me. One of the reasons it didn't scare me, this is something that nobody's ever really heard me talk about. I was a medic in the Army. I'd spent my 3 years during Vietnam, but I was a conscientious objector. And I had no religion. And they didn't recognize conscientious objection without religion. So for 3 years, I'd spent time, all 3 years, fighting to get recognized as a CO. And eventually I won. And it was something that had been fought over since the writing of the Constitution. And I was the guy who won it, who won the right to be recognized as, whose conscience was recognized to be nonviolent and honored by saying, okay, well, then you don't have to carry a weapon and you don't have to fight you don't have to kill people, which is why I'd become a medic in the first place. So when I got out of the Army and I had won this thing and changed the Army regulations and had gone all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was like I wasn't even 21 yet, and I'd gotten out of the Army after all of that, being imprisoned in a little cell for 2 years, allowed out only to work, to fly in the helicopters and pick up patients. And I had gone through the lowest ebb of my life and come out on top. So when I came back to Catalina at 20 and said, okay, I'm heading to Hollywood, people were going, do you understand the odds in Hollywood? Do you understand how hard Hollywood is? I said, I'm not afraid of odds. I'm not afraid of Hollywood. I had beaten some big odds already. And it just made me realize that you just have to stick to it and you win. If you stick to it, you'll win. And so I went to Hollywood with that frame of mind, and that's the way it worked out. It took a few years.
Now, how long did it start till you started working? I mean, what was your process? Because, you ended up on Trapper John. You were on a few shows before that. And, Trapper John just blew. People don't understand. I try to explain to people how big TV was back then. It's like now there's actors. When actors got work, there was a lot. I mean, the odds were a lot greater just for the fact that now every channel, this. But then people forget, like when you tell them, no, everybody watched this show. Even if like a TV show wasn't that popular, everyone still, people would watch it because someone didn't like it. How did you end up getting to Trapper John? Was it a quick process? I know you did a Logan's Run and a few other things, but how long? Yeah. What was it? Was it very quick for you?
It was, I guess, looking back on it, it was relatively quick. But no, I started. The first thing, somebody came to the acting workshop I was in 1975. These two guys, Don Coscarelli and Craig Mitchell, their father had given them $100,000 to make a movie, and it was going to be non-union for sure. And they just were looking around Hollywood, and they'd go to each acting school and say, "Who's your best actors in your school, and who aren't in the union?" And my acting instructor, Estelle Harmon, at the time, it was Estelle Harmon Actors Workshop, said, okay, I'll show you. And she brought him to a class, and I did a scene that I had already prepared, not for them. I did it for the class. It was just me working on stuff. And they saw it, and they came right to me and said, we want you to star in a movie for us, a feature we're going to make for a year. We're going to shoot it on weekends, and we're going to rent the equipment on a Friday night and bring it back on a Monday morning and pay for 1 day's rental. And we're going to shoot nonstop from Friday night till Monday morning, no resting. And then we'll collapse for the week and do it again the next weekend. We're going to do that for about a year, and we can't pay you, but you get a lot of good film on yourself. And I didn't have anything else going on. I'd created a window washing route on La Brea and Santa Monica Boulevards, where I would wash windows in the middle of the night with a bucket and a squeegee, and I just do ground floors. And once a month I'd go on the inside, do it during the day, and go inside and wash them from the inside. So I was making enough money to survive on. And I said, sure. So for a year, we shot this movie called Jim, the World's Greatest, about a kid in high school who's raising his little brother, and his father's an alcoholic. We shot it. They finished it. It was okay. It was raw. They were 18 years old, these two guys, and they'd won a Super 8 movie contest, and Charles Champlin had been one of the judges, and he was the head Times film critic. So he said, well, if you ever do a movie, show it, give me a call. I'll check it out. So they called him. He checked it out. He loved it. He wrote an article in the front of the LA Times calendar section, raving about the movie, about me. And I got a phone call like that Sunday night, from an agent who said, are you represented? I said, no. And she said, would you like to be? Yeah, hell yeah, sure I would. So I suddenly had, it was Joan Scott at Writers and Artists Agencies. Yeah, and it was she was one of the biggest agents in town, and highly regarded. And so I was starring in a movie that got a great review, had an agent, and Universal. Sid Sheinberg was running Universal at the time, and he apparently had grown up with a younger brother and a father who was an alcoholic. So he said, I love this movie. And they bought the film, reshot half of it because it was so bad. I mean, it was not a bad movie, but it was just, not cinematically, of the quality that they would want. So we reshot half. So that got me in the union. So that was another catch-22. I leapt the fence with that one. But this was after 5 years in Hollywood. So literally, it was like an overnight thing. I had no money in the bank. And I'd been living on scraps for the last year while shooting. But I was a movie star. They released it in Westwood. I got an agent. I got in the union. And I was only going in on leading men after that. And I was 26 years old. And that was how I got my start. Then I went and did another independent film at Paramount that was a thesis for a cinema student at UCLA, or at USC. We shot it on Fraternity Row, and the movie was called Fraternity Row. And that did well as indies go. And then I just started doing guest episodics, did MASH, I did Barnaby Jones, I did all those shows. And suddenly I did Centennial, which was like the biggest miniseries of all time. And I was the central role of Levi Zendt, and surrounded by every decent actor in Hollywood. We had hundreds it was 25 hours long. And then that led to Logan's Run, starring in it. 6 months after the movie came out, we had the series on the air, and that only lasted a season because Star Wars came out and reinvented science fiction worldwide, and we suddenly looked like one of those old TV series with the cigarette smoke coming out of the back of the rocket ship. And then that led to some more TV movies, and like within that year, and then Trapper John, and Trapper John was a huge hit. On in Carol Burnett's time slot. She just left her show at 10 o'clock on Sunday nights. Biggest audience of the week. It's like a can't lose slot, And we did great and ran for 8 years.
How is your life changing? Because it's not like you're just some young punk off the boat, off the bus. You're someone who was in the Army. You studied, so you actually, it's like a minor league baseball player who actually goes through the system and becomes pro. You put in your time. You worked on your chops. But what is it like when you go from basically washing windows when a movie comes out that breaks your career to a few points later? I mean, when you all of a sudden are getting recognized and you have money, how does that change you as an individual?
I'd love to say it didn't change me. I was always been the same guy. And I always tried to be the same guy. I tried to be the humble guy from Catalina who didn't wear hard shoes till he was 15, But of course it changes you and you get spoiled. I mean, the moment you start to be successful is the first moment in Hollywood that anybody offers you anything for free. So when all these starving, desperate people are roaming around Hollywood, unemployed, seeking stardom, and nobody's helping them with anything, and then all of a sudden you get a hit show and you can't buy a pair of shoes. Every company on earth is offering you new shoes and clothes and stuff. Now it's computers and everything is free. And you can't help but believe, oh, I must be worth that. I must be. And so you change, you do change. And I think that's why people value so much the friends that they had and try to keep the friends they had before they were somebody, quote unquote, because those people at least are much more likely to tell them when they're full of,
right.
And provide a real mirror to say, this is who you are becoming. You want to be this person, So I've got some dear friends that I've hung on to really tight that I knew when I was struggling in Hollywood and that I knew in Catalina. I'm still very tight with a few friends that I grew up with in Catalina.
But for you, there's a difference. Like, you weren't Vic Tayback walking around. You were Gregory Harrison with a poster. What is it like? Because you call it a heartthrob. What is that like? When you walk down the street and it's not like people go, oh yeah, there's the guy who plays Mel on Alice. It's like, oh, there's the hunk, because that was the big term back then, hunk, which has disappeared. But how does that affect you? It has to go to your head when women must just throw themselves at you.
Well, I don't have to tell you, I'm sure, but this was the 70s. When penicillin cured everything, and there was no AIDS, and Hollywood acting schools, all of that, all during the time up from 1970 to 1980, was just very lascivious, and I got it all out of my system. This is why at 81 I got married. It was like, okay, you've experienced everything. You've had women throwing themselves at you. No one was really beyond your reach. Now let's try to find something substantial and someone substantial and create a relationship that's got real value. And I've been married since 1981 to Randy Oakes.
How did you meet her?
A very Hollywood way. It was like the least likely lasting relationship of all time. We met on the set of Battle of the Network Stars, and we were all dressed in spandex. She was in this spandex bathing suit, and I wanted to see what she looked like wet. So there was this one competition where you throw at a target and knock her in the tank. If you hit it, she falls into the water tank. And Howard Cosell was hosting it, and I said, he said, Gregory, who do you want to throw in the water? And I said, that Randy Oakes on NBC, that girl on that team. And she got up there and she looked really good wet because I knocked it 3 times and put her in the water 3 times. She looked good wet. I carried her out of the thing and put her back on the bench, and it's all on YouTube. I mean, you can see it on YouTube. And that was the moment. And a year later, we were married, and it's it's a great relationship. We've had 4 wonderful children, almost 4 decades of happiness together, and it hasn't always been easy. And I haven't always been the best husband in the world, and she's pretty much been the best wife in the world. But I haven't always been the best husband. But I've learned and gotten better over the years, and it's a good life. I got no regrets.
Now, I think it was on Facebook because you post a lot. You posted about your sobriety. Was it 30 years recently? Was it?
Yeah, 33 years.
What made you decide to get sober? Because so many people you hear there's a definitive moment that moment of clarity. What made you decide that said, hey, you know what? This is no good for me.
I don't know how much you know about sobriety and bottoming out and all that, but it's a long, arduous process for most people to get to that point. I had about 9 years of cocaine addiction, and it didn't start out. No one starts out wanting to be an addict. You just playing, got money. I think it was Robin Williams said, "Cocaine is God's way of telling you make too damn much money." And so I about 4 or 5 years into that use and abuse, I realized, oh, you're not just having fun, you're an addict. But it was another 4 or 5 years before I got desperate enough and humbled enough to be able to say, you can't fix this on your own. And those years were terrible. I mean, how Randy stayed with me, I'll never know. But I was losing I quit being creative for about 5 years. I was still working, still producing, still starring in movies, but I wasn't doing anything creative. I wasn't pushing, getting better. I wasn't growing. I was just barely hanging on to that stuff. And my marriage was falling apart. My health was certainly falling apart. My professionalism was falling apart. I was directing episodes of Trapper John, and I would show up. I wouldn't show up. And I was the director. And I'd get a phone call at 7 a.m. Greg, are you coming in today? And I would have gone to sleep 2 hours earlier because I was up all night planning my shots and stuff, but doing toots all night long. And it's just Randy eventually. I would stay in my office. I had an office in the house, and I'd just stay in there and sleep on the couch every night. She said, she told me later, she said, I just was waiting to see how you were going to die. You either hang yourself or you die of a heart attack, one or the other. I knew every morning when I'd go in there and open the door and walk in and look, that I'd see you in one position or another. And somehow I didn't. And then we had a baby that was about 1.5 years old at that point. Emma, my oldest child, now she's 34, 33. And when I was using, which was about 3/4 of the day, take an hour or two after I woke up before I do my first snort of the day, she wouldn't come to me. She'd be all over me, climbing on me, hugging me, wanting me to hold her until I walked into my office and did my first little snort of blow. And I'd walk back out and say, come here, Em. And she would just look at me like I was somebody different. She wouldn't come to me. And that was the final straw. That was the heartbreaker. That it wasn't the marriage falling apart or the career falling apart or the health falling apart or becoming a liar and a deceiver and self-loathing. It wasn't all of that. It was my daughter not willing to come to me when I was using that put me on a phone call to the Betty Ford Center. And eventually, within a couple of weeks of that, driving down there and doing about 3 grams of blow on the trip down as an adios. And I haven't used again since August, September of 1987.
That's awesome. Now, do you think, with people with addictions, do you think that right now, because people are penned up in their house, do you think it's a really hard time for them? I mean, and I don't know if people can actually go to meetings, but I mean, how do you think this deals with the psyche of someone who is, who especially someone who recently, let's say in a year or 2 years, was sober? I mean, have you probably talked to a lot of people in the community. How is this affecting people? Is it as bad as we may think it might be?
It's always worse than anybody thinks it might be. There's so many people addicted out there that, one, don't know they're addicted, and two, are addicted but can't, like I was, they just can't bring themselves to admit it or seek help. And then there are all of those people who are addicted that are much worse than I was, in that they need a meeting every day. They need it. And without it, they lose their way on the path to sobriety and to a happy life. And so there's a lot of cyber meetings going on. I've been talking to some friends recently who are figuring out ways to try and combat this isolation, because isolation is where you go when you're an addict. Your self-loathing puts you into isolation. You get tired of pretending and of telling lies and of blaming others, and so you end up isolating yourself and just doing your drug and feeling horrible about everything, about yourself in the world. And that requires more drugs to help get you away from that for a few minutes before it comes back in an even bigger wave. I mean, it's just a terrible cycle. So I don't know. I mean, I know it's really hard for people who are trying to find sobriety and stick to it today. I'm beyond that stage. I do a meeting every morning in the mirror. I wake up, I look in the mirror, and I know exactly who I'm looking at and what his disease is.
Now,
so for me, it's not that hard.
Now, when you got sober, how long till you really felt your creativity started flowing again? Because you said you'd felt that you had lost that.
Yep. 2 years. Maybe 2 years. It was about 2 years before my wife started to trust me again. It was about 2 years before my creativity started to flow, before I started to trust myself again, and trust my sobriety, that maybe it wasn't just this hour or this afternoon I'm going to stay sober. Maybe I can actually, start to just sort of relax and go, no, I think you're going to be able to stay sober for a few days at least. It's not good to look down the road and say, I'm never going to use again. One day at a time. But you need to be able to relax and trust, sort of like an actor needing to be able to, if you want to cry or be emotional on camera, you can sabotage yourself by always trying to keep it at the surface where it's ready and available, instead of trusting that when the time it's called for, it'll be there. And the same is true of your sobriety. You have to be able to trust that when things get tough, when things get really crappy in the world, or when my world falls apart, I'm trusting that I will make choices that will not lead me to back into my disease. But that takes time. Like anything, it takes time and experience to learn to trust it. And so it's about 2 years, and that's when my creativity started. I could trust my impulses again. I could trust myself around people who had seen me take this dip and were now trusting me to be back where I was, if not better. It's a process,
Now, when you came back, when you got sober, did you start taking class again, or had you stopped class? Or, how is it, because you've acted for so long, and, you've been, you were a star. Do you still take class? Do you still sit there and say, I need to flex my muscles outside of the camera and the director saying what to do?
I didn't do that. Some people do, and it's a logical thing to do, and I think it's probably really a good thing to do. But I had a production company. I had a theater. I was producing 60 different productions over a course of 10 years. I started doing more theater, which meant every day I was exercising those muscles, re-familiarizing myself with creativity, with the freedom that was required to be able to do theater and know how to bring it to a theater media, as well as to a smaller television media or a a film screen, to understand the milieu that you're working in, and so I was getting what you get in an acting class, but in spades. I was working the muscles, and I kept doing, and I've always done it. That's your initial question today, was how's this layoff? That's really what bothers me the most. I mean, I haven't wondered, there's a moment of wonder where you go, geez, do I still know how to do this? Until the last few months. It's like, well, I'm not doing it. Do I still know how to do it? Oh yeah, I think I do. But it's disconcerting. I'm used to like going to the gym every day. I'm used to going to the set every day.
Now, you directed a few episodes of Trapper John and one of Touched by an Angel. Did you ever want to pursue directing, because you are very knowledgeable of acting and you know how it works? And I always think that actors who direct bring that much more to it because they know what the actor's going through. Did you ever want to choose that path at all, or something that you didn't? You're like, nah.
No, I did. I did. I was tempted, but I also understood that as opposed to acting, sometimes acting requires this much devotion and focus, but usually acting is you're one of the players on the team, and it isn't a full-time marriage to the project. And the times I've directed and the directors that I've known or that I've hired to direct movies I've produced, it's a marriage. It's 24/7 for months, if not longer. And I'm not willing to make that. I'm not happy making that sacrifice. I love my career in relation to the rest of my life. And I have to have a rest of my life for that to balance out. I love surfing. I love my family. I love being relaxed. I love free time to sit and consider the universe. I'm not so ambitious or needing attention or success so much that I'm willing to sacrifice the happiest parts of my life in order to get it. I love theater, and I love to go spend 2 or 3 months doing a play, which I did 6 months ago. Down at the Laguna Playhouse, I did The Lion in Winter, one of the best plays of all time, and had a great time with Francis Fisher. And it was great, but it was a couple of months, and that's the kind of gigs that I love. I love devoting myself for a period of time, and then I'll go to a surf camp at Magdalena Bay down on Baja, and I'll devote myself to that for a week or two. And then I'll come back and I'll devote myself to my granddaughter in Portland for a week or two. So that's my balance. That's what keeps me happy. That's my happy place.
Now, when did your love of surfing start? And I know you're a very avid surfer. Is that just because growing up in Catalina, or when did this love of surfing start? And are you? I bet you're a really good surfer.
Well, I was a pretty good surfer. Yeah, I'm 70 years old now, so you pull back a lot, and the endurance and all those things. I have to keep in mind my age, because mentally I feel 30, but I know I'm 70. And I'll get caught in, if I go out and surf that's too big for me, and I get caught inside on a big set, and there's 6 or 7 waves in that set, I'm at the point now where I'm old enough that I may not have the endurance that I used to have to survive that, and certainly not have the endurance that's necessary to call that fun, getting pounded by 6 or 7 waves for 4 or 5 minutes and nearly drown and make your way back in humiliated, and lay on the beach and try to catch your breath again. I mean, but I did start surfing when I was 9 years old, 1959 in Catalina. It was before the Beach Boys, and before, it was like the first year of Surfer magazine. And when I surfed on the backside of Catalina, there was nobody within 13 miles. Was Avalon to that surf spot was 13 miles, and I'd hike it, and carry a surfboard half the time. And my father would drive. He'd drive me out there and drop me off with a couple of buddies. These guys were still my friends, and we'd surf all day, never see a human being. and camp sometimes for weekends and eat SpaghettiOs and come back in on a Sunday night, go back to school for 5 days and go back out and camp again. I just fell in love with it. I fell in love. It's a drug. It's an addiction. The moment you finish it, it's just like cocaine. The moment you finish it, you want to do it again. You want to do it again. Oh, that was great. Let's do it again. It's a drug, you know. And riding a wave is it's a really healthy drug if you put it in the right context, you know, in your life. And it always has stayed there for me. It's always been a beautiful respite for me from anything else in the world that may be getting me down. But I've seen it turn people into much less than they could have been or should have been or wanted to be. So it's like any drug, you know, it's some drug. Everybody has a drug of choice that they can't control. For me, that was cocaine. It's not surfing. Surfing has always been a good thing in my life. Now,
you've had a very long career, and I always crack up because whenever my wife Joanne sees you on Hallmarks or anything, that's what my wife does. When any one of my guests have been on any show, I'll hear from the other room, "Hey, honey, it's Gregory Harrison," or, you know, "Hey, it's Spencer Garrett," or anyone, you know. And it's always so funny. Yep. But how did you get involved with the Hallmark movies? And we were wondering, what is is that a quick shoot, and where do they shoot? Because you can't tell.
It is interesting that you can't tell, because most of their stuff shoots up in the Northwest or in Canada, in BC, Vancouver Island, the city of Vancouver. Some of their stuff shoots elsewhere. I've shot a couple of Hallmark movies in Colorado, one in Toronto, but a lot of Canadian productions because Canada gives such good incentives to shoot lower budget films up there, you know, and then they save you, you know, a fourth or a fifth of the budget that it would cost to make the same movie in the States somewhere. But I did a Hallmark movie about 10, 12 years ago, and it did well, and you become a part of their repertory company. It literally, I mean, they have, as you can see, if you look at their schedule, they use the same people a lot. Getting into that group is probably a really big goal for a lot of actors. I was lucky. I got into it, and I've done 10 or 12 Hallmark films over the years, 3 or 4 Christmas movies. I've also done 2 series for them. I'm doing Chesapeake Shores. I do a recurring role on Chesapeake Shores. Treat Williams and I play brothers. And that's been going for 4 years now. And Signed, Sealed, Delivered, Martha Williamson's series on there. I've been playing the father of the lead character for 4 or 5 years. So we do 3 or 4 movies a year of that.
Well, it's funny about that one because I don't know. As I said, my wife, I always crack up. She goes from she watches that show Big Brother, she watches Hallmark, she watches MSNBC, and she watches Discovery ID. And that's like it's like the most vast guys. But it's funny because I walked by the other day, and I guess they're playing older ones that she really didn't see, and it was a Signed, Sealed, Delivered. And I'm like, "Hey, is Gregory in this?" And she's like, "It just started. Leave me alone." But now, what was Au Pair? Was that Hallmark or was that Lifetime? That was with Jeffrey Sherman, right?
Yes, Jeffrey wrote, and that was like ABC Family. Remember when ABC Family was a channel? And then I think it got bought by Chaim Saban, and it became a different channel. But anyway, we made 3 of them. We made the first one, and it did incredibly well. It was like the most watched TV movie of that decade or something. And so they said, let's do another. And we did another one. First one was shot in Hungary, and the second one was shot in Prague. And then we did a third one about 5 years later in Puerto Rico, in which I finally surfed as the character. I'm like a rich it's sort of the plot of The Sound of Music without the music. I'm a rich CEO, and I hire the nanny to become my children's nanny, and then we fall in love, and we're flying all over the world, and it was one of those kind of things.
Now,
but it was so much fun to shoot.
What made it so fun? Just because it was the location probably helped.
Yeah,
But
it was a location. I mean, the people were great. We had a nice cast. We had good people, still friends. But being on location in Europe, we were shooting in. I was playing a rich guy, so we're shooting in castles, and airplanes, and castles, and balloons, and in the most beautiful countryside that I've ever seen anywhere. You know, and in Prague, in Hungary, we were in Budapest, and the whole time we're shooting, I'm touring both sides of the river and meeting all these interesting people. And I'm a real political guy. You know, I love politics and I love sociology. And so we have a Hungarian crew. You know, this was in '99, I think. It was the first movie was in 1999, and they just the wall had gone down in what was it, 89 or 90, and so I could get this perspective from the locals that I was with all day, every day. We could talk about how has your world changed since the wall came down and you quit being part of the Soviet bloc. And I love understanding that kind of stuff. I love getting an inside feel every country I travel. And so we had that too. And it was a really interesting time in the world.
now, through your career, what would you say some of your favorite acting jobs was? What was the one where you played the male stripper? What was that? What was that called?
For ladies only.
I thought it was called A Night in Heaven. No, I guess okay. I think that was Chris Rackets. How did you end up? I mean, what was it like playing a stripper? I mean, did you look back and go? I mean, what was it like shooting that? Because I heard you became a huge icon in the gay community.
Yeah, I wasn't aiming for that audience, but I got him, and it was the most popular TV movie in history at that time, and my poster from that movie. The one you referred to earlier, I think I was told by the company that made it that it was the second most popular poster ever behind the Farrah Fawcett erect nipple poster. Which is some claim to fame, huh? But it was my first production for my production company. I just created Catalina Productions. And I went to NBC. I didn't even have a script. My partner and I went to NBC and said, and they had a picture of me. I had taken a picture with a towel wrapped around me. And we put it on a big billboard and said, for ladies only on it. And I brought it out. I uncovered it. I had a sheet over it. I uncovered it in the office where I'm pitching the movie. And I said, this is the movie that I want to make for NBC. And I said, we don't have a script yet, but he's a male stripper. And like 1 year earlier, Chippendales had opened with the first male strip club in the world, right? And they just went, we don't need a script. Sure. And I had a deal for my first movie from my production company immediately. No script, nothing. And then we hired a writer. They gave us some money to develop it with. We hired a writer, and I came up with this storyline because when I was struggling in Hollywood, it was the story of a stripper of a guy, an actor who's in New York studying acting, wants to be a legit actor so bad. He's studying serious drama. And one of the guys in class who was played by Mark Singer, is making money at night. And he's saying, hey, man, you should come with me. I'm working at this club, and it's really great. And, all you got to do is, like, have your shirt off, and you can serve drinks to all these chicks, nothing but chicks in the club. And I said, oh, man, I'm starving. Yeah, sure, okay. If that's all it is, sure. And I go, and, of course, all about Eve. One night, the head stripper doesn't show up, and they throw me on stage. And I'm a smash. So now I'm, like, on the cover of People magazine, within a few months as this stripper, and I can't buy an audition. My acting career has gone totally out the window because I have legitimized myself as a stripper. What this is all based on was that when I first got to Hollywood, when I was pounding the pavement, I've been writing songs and doing music. I'd learned to play the guitar in the Army. I'd go to the Troubadour every Monday night for Hootenanny night. You'd stand in line in the afternoon, get yourself a 15-minute slot, and I'd go there and I'd sing my song that I'd written. And I was just hoping that somebody would give me some producer, because Chrysalis Records, all these different people, all these execs would be there, and they'd come up and hand me a card, a business card, and I'd finally start my music career. And so that's all I was waiting for every Monday night. And every Monday night, I'd get 4 or 5 guys coming up to me and handing me the business cards, and I'd be so excited until I'd look at the cards, and they were porn producers. I'd always go, Jesus, if I could just get a legit producer. But the idea that, no, if I did that, I would never, it would haunt me. It would haunt me my whole career. So I never did it. But I always liked toying with the idea of what if I had? So this was a chance for me. Instead of porn, I was stripping because that was the new big thing at the time in 1980. And I took the script from that and hired a guy to write it, but I created the whole story. The movie was a huge smash. My company got 3 or 4 more films developed out of it. So it did everything it was supposed to do. But the scenes and the pictures from that movie have followed me around to the point now that just 3 days ago I got on IMDb. And I'm like looking at, because I just came out, and a movie I'm in just came out called The Vanished with Peter Facinelli and a really great cast, Anne Heche, a couple others. And I'm looking at the cast. There's a picture of Peter and Anne and all these different people, and then there's a picture of me. It's for ladies only. It's me in what we called my Z string, was I'd stripped down from Zorro to a G string with a Z on the front. And that's the picture they're using on IMDb now. So it's like 35, 40 years later, I'm still defined by that. But so it goes. I mean, you can't argue with success, I guess.
Yeah, just tell me about The Vanished. Grateful. Tell me about The Vanished. Tell me about the movie The Vanished.
Well, Peter Facinelli and my daughter, Lillian Harrison, who's an actor, are engaged, and they're going to get married. They were planning on getting married sometime in the last few months, but that all changed when this COVID hit. So that's down the road somewhere. But Peter, like last winter, early in the end of 2019, was making this movie based on a script he'd written, and he asked me if I'd come in and play a psychiatrist in it, working with this couple that has lost their child. So, and Lily's got a role in it too. My daughter's got a role in it too. So I flew down to Tallahassee. I think it was Tallahassee. No, I can't remember. Alabama somewhere. And for like 2 days, and shot a couple days on this film. And it's a great script. It's a thriller, kind of a mystery whodunit thriller. And it just came out. They were going to release it in theaters, but it just came out 2 days ago on it being streamed. It's the only way you can release a movie these days, So I haven't even seen it yet, and they didn't have a premiere or anything, But it's gotten rave reviews, and everybody's very excited about it now because the reviewers all loved it. I think it got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, is what I was just told. So
now you said it's on streaming, which everything does stream now. The industry has changed. As you said, when you saw Doris Day saying, "Oh, let's do that again." Now, It seems because of digital, people can just run, and you can just cut a scene and basically like cut and paste. Do you think that hurts the actor when people study? Because before, if you had kept going and you kept screwing up your scene, everyone's getting pissed at you. They're like, come on, and you're wasting film. I mean, how do you think that's changed the industry and the craft, especially for young actors?
Well, it's changed it for sure, but it's reduced the amount of discipline required, artistic discipline. That can be a good thing. Some areas where discipline is, I really miss it from young actors. The discipline of theater, for instance, can be, is an invaluable tool for actors who've never done theater. And you can really tell most of the time, those who have and those who haven't. But on the other hand, because there is no such thing as expensive film that we're wasting with 40 takes, You just digitally just roll the camera and say, well, all right, let's play. Let's do the scene 15 different ways, And there are directors who just say, forget the script. We know what the story is. Let's just play it. Just see what happens. And then you're right. They can cut and paste. They'll say, well, that moment really worked. Let's use that. Let's put that with that. And you end up with, I think, some of the most naturalistic and surprising turns in scripts. But it requires everybody being on the same page in terms of what project are we shooting, Are we all doing the same movie? Was one person doing a farce and the other one's doing a serious drama, or are we all together on that? So that's where the director becomes more valuable than ever, in my opinion, is to make sure, is to keep everyone on that same page, to keep everyone synced up so that the advantages of having virtually no lights required, having little bullet cameras that can be placed all over. You can get 15 different angles at once if you want. You can have microphones, body mics and microphones hidden everywhere that are never visible. You can shoot on any kind of natural location. All those things are just, and film. Or not film, but digital footage. You can out of a 8mm, that ages myself. You can make films out of an iPhone that are pretty damn good. I've seen some, exceptionally good, some of them. So I think there's actually more advantages and disadvantages in the way the business has turned now. And there's 400 or 500 channels,
right?
And they're all making product. They're not paying anything much for it because there's so many channels now that most of the time, that's what it's done to the business, and it may have happened anyway without digital and all that. But is the middle class of actors has pretty much ceased to exist. You have the big players, big money players, and then you have everybody working for scale. And acting isn't their prime gig. They're hobbyists. Talented hobbyists, but hobbyists. They can't support themselves strictly on an actor's paycheck. And I have I was lucky. I've never done anything since I got that first gig. I've never done anything for money but act. And I think I'm the last generation that's going to be able to say that.
I always hear that. Yeah, it's crazy. Even the commercials and stuff like that, it's just changed. Now, with your acting, when are you going to feel comfortable to go back to work? Like if someone said, hey, Gregory, we're shooting a project in Prague or, Croatia, which I was there for my honeymoon. Croatia was beautiful.
Oh, wow.
If they were saying that, how long till you would get back up? Because you haven't left the house. Do you feel safe yet?
No, I don't feel safe in that sense. I feel safe because I know that I will be careful and am careful, always thoughtful about who I'm exposing and who I'm being exposed by. But I'm not going to get on an airplane, not yet. I've been asked to fly up to Canada in the middle of next month, and I'll consider it. We'll see how the world is then. But right up until the day that I'm going to leave, I'll probably be second guessing or trying to figure out maybe it's safe if I drive. I did order one of those mattresses for the back seat of my car on Amazon. That has that fills the wheel or the footwells,
right.
Back seat so that you can lay flat on it, just in case I have to drive somewhere overnight and I don't want to stay in a hotel, and I don't want to. I'm getting one of those bathroom containers that you can use your own bathroom and just store it until you get to a place where you feel safe dumping it. Silly as that is, have you been in a gas station bathroom lately? You don't want to be there.
I haven't been anywhere, and we're really screwed. Our first anniversary is September 13th. We had planned to go somewhere nice, just for a few days. Now I think we're going to drive out to Watkins Glen because I heard they're very friendly and it's nice and there's, vineyards and falls. But it's crazy. I haven't seen this stuff and I'm the same way. I'm like, my friends are like, yeah, come on, we're going out. I don't want to go out. I always sit there and I go, you know what?
Yep.
I'd rather pick up food, come home, I have my own beer. I'm not paying $6 a bottle. I don't have to tip. We tip the person when we pick it up, though, just because they're working their asses up. And unlike California, New Jersey, servers only make $2.25 an hour, which is complete bullshit. But so I'm the same way. It's weird, and I think people. I'm not going to go into it, but I just don't understand. Like, I have a business job, and people are like, "Oh, you come to this big networking thing." I'm like, no. If I'm gonna take a chance and go out, it's not going to be hanging out with you schlubs. I'm going to go out with my friends, and it's not going to be. And that's what people don't get. I mean, so for you, I mean, it must be weird. I mean, even your set life. I mean, going on set would probably be completely different.
You create. I think they're creating mini bubbles in a set too, so that you have your makeup team, your hair person, makeup person. You have your assigned people. Those two people that can approach you. One wardrobe person that can approach you, and they can't approach the other actors. They can't approach anybody else, and you get these little bubbles on the set. That's a big bubble, so that everybody's using the same vans. Everybody's in the same hotel room. Nobody's going out at night or when you're not filming. No one's exposing themselves to civilians outside of the bubble. It's sort of like what they're doing with the basketball teams and the baseball teams, and even that, it's no guarantee. I mean, you're seeing, baseball. What was it? The Marlins had 21 players that were exposed to COVID.
I have one more question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. How long do you think you'll act? Let's say you live to 95. How would you be acting until the very end, man? Or are you ever going to sit there and go, you know what? I'm going to start making it a little bit as a hobby. I mean, what is your future in that?
I suspect I'll act until the day I drop, because I do love it. I really love it. I don't love doing things that aren't challenging, but if I don't get challenged, I challenge myself. I'm capable of making opportunities happen for roles that I haven't been there before. I haven't done that thing before. I do books on tape. I do these I do radio plays. I do hybrid kind of work that is an interesting combination I may not have done before. So I'm learning something, and I'm experimenting. And as long as I keep doing that, I'll keep acting. I really do love performing. I still think like that little boy who watched movies at 5 years old and always sat in the front row of the casino ballroom movie theater over in Catalina, so I could watch the movie from periphery to periphery, and I would look at it and go, "This is magic." They create something out of nothing. They make me feel things out of nothing. They create it. They're magicians, and I still am inspired by acting as I was back then. And to be a magician was always my dream, and that's my way of doing it.
Well, I want to thank you. This was great. People, go look up Gregory Harrison on IMDb. Look at his movies. Stream The Vanishing. It's going to be his son-in-law, so you got to stream. The son-in-law. It makes him, feel good. Also, people, go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 800 episodes. Email me, Cooper@coopertalk.net. Twitter @CooperTalk, Instagram @CooperTalk1. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't remember, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.